Hello everyone. In this tutorial, we will see how to create our first project. So let's open our program. By default, the program automatically opens the last project you saved. So we will use the command, create a new project. This will reset the program with an empty project. In the pop-up window, give your project a name. Default is Project 1. And set the aspect ratio. By default, and depending on your program's default settings, this aspect is the 16:9. This is also the standard format at the moment, so we'll leave it as is. Click on Validate to launch our new project. By default, the assembly table is in Views format. Let's put it in timeline mode. This will allow us to manage our future order tracks. Let's add our first thumbnail. But, by the way, what are these thumbnails? A thumbnail is a part of your montage, containing the elements of that part. We can compare it to a sequence in a film. To add a thumbnail, either open the View menu and click on Insert an empty view, or right-click in the timeline in its upper space reserved for thumbnails, not in the lower part reserved for order tracks. And, in the contextual menu, click on Insert an empty view. Or finally, use the key combination Alt+S. Our first thumbnail is then created and placed at the far left, and its start coincides with time 0 of the timeline. Originally and by default, the time of our thumbnail is 5 seconds. But this can vary according to the default parameters that you would have defined, and, also, project options. If we are in default mode, then the thumbnail time is 5 seconds, and you can see that our thumbnail does cover the first 5 seconds of our timeline very exactly. What else can we see in the timeline? We can see a grey line just above the thumbnail, and this only covers the first 2 seconds. What is this line? This line represents the transition duration when opening the playback of the corresponding thumbnail. By default, the transition time is 2 seconds, and the effect used is the crossfade, that is the previous view, here being the first view of the montage, is its background color, that is black, which will become transparent over a period of 2 seconds, allowing the content of your thumbnail to appear at the same time, and at the beginning of its time. We will see a little later how to modify the parameters of, or, the transition. If we want to see the exact values applied to the time and the transition, you can switch to Views mode, and there your thumbnail will take on a square size, unrelated to its duration, but, in its top, you have the type of transition used and its duration. On the right, the time of the thumbnail, you can click on each of these elements to modify their value. And below, its index number followed by its name. Originally and by default it should be 1.empty. In timeline mode, you can modify the duration of your thumbnail by placing your cursor on its right edge. It then takes the form of a double arrow. Click, hold it, and move the right edge to match the desired time value. I'll set it to 6 seconds. Here. You can also modify the time of the transition by the same principle, by the right edge of this one. I'll put it down to 1 second. So now my thumbnail will be 6 seconds long, and its opening transition will be 1 second. We can also perform all of its operations, using the command, configure view. In its main tab you can change the time. Here we should have the value 6.0 seconds. The action to perform at the end of the view, by default is, display the next view. We will see this command element in a more advanced chapter, and leave it in this default form. Though we can set its background color, normally it should be on default, which is set in the program settings, and base, black. You can change the background either to a solid color. If you select this type, a small insert appears, showing and allowing you to choose your desired color. by a gradient background, horizontal or vertical. There are 2, 3 inserts open to choose the 2 colors of your gradient and its direction. With an image, then adding 2 inserts, allowing you to choose your image and its size in proportion to the screen. We will see in another chapter the addition of sound commentary. In advanced option, you can rename your view, plus 3 other functions that we will see in due course. In the tab Transition, you can select the mode of the transition used. You can see that there is already a whole series provided with the program, but you can also create your own, or even obtain on the net. A little exercise. Well, modify the duration of your vignette so that it lasts 8 seconds. Let its name be Part 1, that its background is white, and that its opening transition is 1.5 seconds long. In timeline mode, you should have something like this. And in views mode, to this. Good to know. Regardless of the type of background you use, and regardless of the animations used in your view, your background will remain fixed, at its defined value, and covering the entire screen space for a solid color background or degraded, and a part of the screen defined in its parameters that you will have selected in the menu. Configure the view, for an image type background. Well, you're going to tell me, yes, but my project is not going to last 5, 6 or 7 seconds. Should I change the time of my thumbnail to match the total time of my project? No, not necessarily, unless, for example, your project only contains a video to which you want to add objects or comments only. Then yes, modify the time of your thumbnail so that it corresponds to that of your video. Otherwise, your timeline will usually be created as a result of different views or thumbnails. For example, I want a first part containing a white background, but an intro that crossfades from black over a time of 2 seconds. What should I do? First, and starting from our current project, we will modify the fade-in time, and set it to 2 seconds. This done, we will add an empty thumbnail, with a black background, at the beginning of our project, with the duration of 0 seconds, because the time of the transition at the end of the view, is after the end of this one, and defined and included in the following. How? Add a new empty thumbnail, either by the menu, View, or by a right-click in the assembly table, and the command, Insert an empty view, or by the combination, Alt+S. In the future I will not repeat its various possibilities. Your new thumbnail has been created following the first one. For your information, each time you use this command, the new thumbnail will be placed directly after the selected thumbnail, and if none are selected, at the end of your montage. In short, we want our thumbnail to be the first. We'll do this by selecting it with a click, holding the click, and dragging it to the left. It will then take the first place in our montage. Its index number will be modified to 1, and that of our first view created, to 2. Let's set the new view time to 0 seconds, and its transition time to 0. You notice that the minimum time of a view is 1/1000th of a second. Place the time scroll cursor on 0, at its far left, then play the animation by clicking on the command, play. We notice that on the first 2 seconds, our screen goes from black to white, then remains frozen in white until the end of the animation, which corresponds to the criteria of this one that we defined above. So, in this chapter, you have seen how to add and configure views in your timeline, as well as the basic principle of transitions. Familiarize yourself with these, and in our next chapter we'll look at adding items to our views. See you soon. Katerina and Patrick.